This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is Tuesday, July 30th, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is my co-host, my son, fellow investigator, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And folks, you're about to hear 3 hours, count them, 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news analysis and information of critical importance. This is stuff you need to know. You're listening to the only show, I believe, where the news is presented in three dimensions. We add depth to the news stories. We look beyond the headlines, the bylines, the white noise of all of the clutter that is just filling the airwaves, and we get to the heart of the news, behind the news. For those new listeners just tuning in, ladies and gentlemen, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us on the Internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. And from there, you can click Listen Live, or on the upper right where it says RSS feed. If you click that, you'll find a complete listing of our archives. That's a complete listing of our archives. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. We have a very special program for you tonight. As the program unfolds, we're going to be touching a multitude of subjects. Now, the second hour, we are going to have a candidate for governor 2014 in Nevada, Mr. Vanderbeek.
David Vanderbeek.
David Vanderbeek, right. He's going to be talking to us about what he sees taking place in this country and what he intends to do to stop it, if he can. Now, he's a younger man. Anyone younger than me, which is 90% of the population, is younger, of course. But that said, it's it's going to be interesting to see what he has to say. That's the second hour of the program. But the first hour, we've got a number of news items to get into. But before we do, Joe, welcome. I do want to take a minute here to go over something that was bothering me not bothering me, but it's been on my mind after our show last evening. But hey, welcome to the studio, man. I can smack you around. Yeah. Folks, and I would urge everyone when they listen to this, if you have a pen and paper nearby, because certain things that we talk about, you might want to make note of.
I'm going to grab my pen and paper right now.
All right. Well, Joe, last night we had a great show with. We
had a show last night?
Yeah, we did actually, and then I was on Coast to Coast right after that, just briefly.
Yeah, it was very powerful shows actually. Sunday night and last night. Sunday night we had Pastor David Langford and Steve Quill, and then last night we had V and Steve, and that was a excellent show. A lot of important information was given in there. And tonight, as you said, David Vanderbeek will be coming on, and tomorrow night we have John Moore coming on the first hour, and I have not finalized it, but hopefully we can get Stan Dale on for the second hour.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'm not sure. I did forget to give you, or didn't give you some messages before that. I'm not sure. Hopefully that'll take place. But we're looking forward to. Stan Dale is just an amazing guy. I know what an amazing guy he is. Knowledgeable. Wow. And by the way,
much is happening too. There's things going on with the sun and some other changes. So definitely we have to get him back on regardless. As
we want to make him a regular fixture to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Yeah, and Stan's Hour.
Stan's Hour, that's right.
Stan's Hour, once a week.
Corner.
If he could do it, maybe twice a month. I'm not sure how we can work it out, but he needs to have a regular spot on our show as things are changing so rapidly. It is fall where we are now. It changed from summer or spring to
fall.
A week of summer, then fall.
Yes.
It's been in the lower 70s.
Upper 60s. Actually, this morning, my thermometer said 59 degrees.
Yeah, my wife's asking to turn the heat on at night, and I'm telling her she's crazy. Because she gets cold for whatever reason, even if it's 60, 70 degrees, which is, I'm not complaining about it being cool because I love this kind of weather.
Right. But it's certainly...
Usually at this time it's about 90 degrees with 120% humidity, and it's rough.
Yeah, and it was interesting because after being on Coast to Coast last night, which really kind of, I got to tell you, folks, man, sometimes after doing a show, then you go in just for 2 or 3 minutes on national, syndicated radio, coast to coast, and then you come back. You try to get some sleep, and you're pretty keyed up. I was pretty keyed up, and then, but this morning I was out walking my dog, and I walked by a gentleman, landscaper, mowing a piece of property down the road. It's actually commercial property. And for whatever reason, I just stopped to talk to him. And Joe, you mentioned about the lack of seasons. And folks, I got to tell you something. This is real. He said to me, it's as if we are 2 or 3 months ahead or behind on the calendar. Our bodies are telling us one thing, the weather is telling us one thing, the calendar is telling us another. And it was a very similar statement made to me by someone else on Saturday. And we have gotten so much rain in this area. The ground is saturated. And this, by the way, also plays into what we talked about last week about the dome and the sinkholes and the pressure. But aside from that, there was one thing, a couple of things I wanted to mention, some house cleaning issues here first. Folks, I love getting emails from listeners, from new listeners, where you're listening from. You don't have to be verbose in your emails. Send an email. You can go to HomelandSecurityUS.com. Just click on my name and just say, hey, this is Joe listening from, Eagle Point, Montana, or something like that. You don't have to do it during the show. Just check in with us. And I'd love to know, because what we're trying to do is see where, and we're not harvesting your email. We're not trying to be anything more than just to see where people are listening. We've got emails from multiple countries, as I said, in numerous states and 6 countries. It's so phenomenal to receive these. But just drop me a line and let me know where you're listening from. But folks, if you have a pen and paper nearby, last night's program we talked about the financial collapse, and people that there are many people worried about what they can do or what they could put away, put aside. Of course, it's food, it's water, it's the preparations. And, of course, the precious metals. And, not every one of us can afford silver or gold. And, look, if you can save up a little
even
bit for
storable food.
Long-term storable food.
Right.
But certainly really, you can go to the grocery store and throw an extra can of soup in the cart, and start that way, right?
Right. And I received an email, and maybe this is the same email you saw, basically, well, if we can't prepare with food, we're not part of the club, or something to that effect. And this is why if the people who have the means to prepare with food and water above what would be considered normal for other people's sake, for your family's sake, for your neighbor's sake, if we should already be doing this today in the society we live in, and we could kick the dependence of so many people on government if we were more neighborly like we should be, if we were more united like we should be.
Well, that's true. And little things you can do. I just want to kind of chime in here, because when we go through the news and give you the bad news and the worse news, well, do we give you any answers? And this is one thing that I was wrestling with in my mind as I walked my dog, and I'm thinking, wow, what can we tell people, or what can we advise people to do? And one of the issues, Joe, and I think that this is something that everyone should really think about. We tend to think kind of in a very, very closed environment. We are the center of our universe, and that's how most people think, right? We don't think,
right. And the show title, lack of knowledge,
right?
And
right.
It's not a lack of information or knowledge. It is a lack of
sometimes
wisdom,
it's a lack of will.
Important,
yes.
And what you do with that wisdom, and understanding that wisdom. And there's a lot of Bible references to this, how people deal with wisdom, how people deal with knowledge. It says, for the lack of knowledge, my people perish. The wisdom or the knowledge of man is foolish to the Lord. And it goes on to explain what wisdom does when it is applied and used correctly. And it says in Ecclesiastes 9:18, wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroyeth much good. But and there's many other references to what wisdom does.
Exactly.
And wisdom and knowledge shall be stability in the times, and strength of salvation. The fear of the Lord is his treasure. But then we have the verses where you see, wisdom of science and philosophy. He will confound the wise in their own wisdom, meaning man's wisdom.
Right.
We know that it talks about how if we look at what you said, like how you said, men look at things through their little bubble, what they know, instead of looking at things with an open mind.
One thing that a good friend of mine has always said, and I'm paraphrasing this, but a wise man, or wisdom is the ability for one to foresee the consequences or foresee future events based on the consequences of current activities or current action. Now, I just really screwed that up, but you get the idea. In other words, you're able to look at the current situation today, and from what's taking place today, you're able to foresee the fallout, the consequences, both intended and unintended, and then plan accordingly, whether you want to get out of the way or, engage, or what you might need to do. And so I was thinking, well, in addition to, if you can't have silver, gold, or whatever, what would I do? And this is, what would I do if I had to prepare from ground zero, or from zero at this point? And in a dire situation, or in situations that are dire, those that are unprepared, you're going to need some survival supplies, of course. You're going to need food, clothing, shelter, protection. In an economic crisis, skills of knowing how to find food, how to fix things, like fix cars, for example, even how to plant a garden. And believe me, there are certain techniques making certain items that will become necessary. It's going to be useful. Your skills will be useful in a bartering situation. But what about some things that maybe you didn't think about, aside from the long-term food and all this? One thing, I just penned out a list here, and just real quick, I'm just going to go over a couple of things, because I think these are things that I look for, and I found certain things that I'm not sure people really. This is stuff we can do. We can put aside. The first thing, gasoline, folks. I would start, if you've got gasoline cans. If you live in an area where, if you're not living in an apartment building, like a high-rise type situation, or if you are, if a friend, or if you know a friend or someone that could keep things on your behalf, I would have some extra cans of gasoline. I'm talking maybe 5 or 6 cans, extra 5 or 6 5-gallon containers. Now, I went to Walmart to look at their plastic, how much plastic gasoline, 5-gallon plastic gasoline cans were. $19. You can get them on sale, different places, but I would have a couple of those. Maybe make it a goal to have an extra, 20, maybe 5 cans, and then the gas inside those cans. Fishing supplies, before I get into that, medicines. Folks, make sure, if you are taking prescription medicines, make sure that you've got enough set aside. You might think, well, this is all elementary. I know this stuff. This is academic to me. Well, to many it's not, so bear with me. But if you can make sure that you've got all of your critical medications from insulin to whatever pill form diabetic medication you take to high blood pressure medicine, or if you're on blood thinners, make sure you've got enough. And if you can, talk to your doctor. You can even ask your doctor for a antibiotic pack. You can tell them, you can be outright forthright with them and tell them that, you want to have it on hand, or, some people I've heard say, well, I'm telling my doctor I'm going to be overseas for a little bit in an area that's going to be kind of dicey, so can you, prescribe me some antibiotics? Like, what are they, Z-Packs or something? Or is that what are they called? I don't know. But, okay, some medicines. Here's something that many people do not think about. We all need shoes, right? Except for Joe. What are you wearing, flip-flops today?
Shoes.
Okay. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah,
Boots.
down here in the studio walking on glass from everything you break.
No.
No,
Boots,
but shoes,
boots,
no.
Boots.
And think of Vietnam.
Yes.
The soldiers. I've read stories about their feet from the wetness, moisture, and the when you're out walking around. Say you had to leave your house and get away, and you were on foot. Can you imagine how your feet would feel after 4 or 5 days of boils, that kind of thing, and good preventative ways to minimize that. You have to think about that. I mean, there's so much thought you'll have to put into if you want to. I mean, you don't really have to. You can roll with the punches as they come, but the days ahead are not going to be comfortable regardless.
Right, but okay. Now, boots. I am a big believer. Yeah, have you ever tried? Have you ever had a what are those things called? Those real painful things on your feet, the bottom of your feet. They're not calluses. They're almost like a wart kind of thing. I don't know, whatever. But if you've ever had one, But get a good pair of boots and make sure you can spray them to be water resistant. But the importance of having a good pair of boots, the military grade boots that have flexible soles and a very deep tread, they're the best kind of shoes, especially if you are going to be walking, through whatever. But I have to say this: I would definitely make sure that you've got a good pair of those. Now, the other things, vitamins. Folks, if you don't take vitamins, I would definitely start. And you can work this out, however, talk to your doctor or whatever, but get yourself on a good vitamin regimen. But here's the other thing, and I got to tell you this, and this is not a paid plug by our sponsor or from our sponsor, but Joe and I received a package in the mail from American Survival Wholesale, and it's their just-in-case bag. Now, at first I thought, wow, well, all of this stuff we could get at Walmart, or not all of it, but some of it at Walmart, some at at Dick's or Cabela's or whatever the stores are. But folks, I got to tell you, this just-in-case bag has got things from pocket knives, emergency fishing kits, emergency stoves. It's got 85 items in there. And I did, as best I could, attempt to do a price comparison between Walmart and American Survival Wholesale. Now, I did not talk to the owners about this at all, and this is not. Well, it's going to be a sales pitch for American Survival Wholesale, I'll be honest with you, but it did not. I had no expectation for it to be. The items in that kit, the fire starters, for example, the pocket knives, the fishing things, the emergency water, the blankets, the what are they called? Mylar blankets or the heating blankets? The emergency blankets. The various things in there are critical, crucial, and stuff that you would not necessarily think of. So get yourself a good bug-out bag. And my recommendation, you can go out to Walmart, you can go through, buy all the stuff independently, but I would definitely go to American Survival Wholesale, and for under $50, you can get the bag and the contents of the bag, 85 different items. That's stuff that I would do. Anyone, I mean, you should be able to even if you can't, if you don't have the extra $50 this week, another week or two, but get one of those bags, because the contents inside the bag and the contents inside are well worth it. But here's the main point I was trying to make, and then we'll move on. Do not discount bartering, because during the times that we're coming on, baby formula, for example, think about in a crisis situation, mothers that will be
bartering, like come with me and I'll give you food.
Well, no, I mean, if you can you fix my car for 2 cans of baby formula, or whatever, however they sell it. I don't even know how it's sold.
I'm thinking about this bartering thing.
Okay.
Think we're talking about in case of some kind of shutdown, economic collapse, disaster, natural disaster, things go bad, stores don't have food, they're not open anymore, electricity's out across the nation. You're going to have people killing each other for a pair of shoes. I mean, we already do now, but
right.
You're going to have people killing each other for a loaf of bread. Would you even feel safe trying to barter with somebody? I mean, what would be...
No, I'm talking about people within your circle. Okay, look. If you develop a circle of friends or a circle of contacts, for example, if you're friendly with your primary care physician, we'll say you've got a doctor that lives down the road or a dentist that lives down the road. Hey, if believe me, do you know a dentist or a doctor that knows how to fix their car, the engine of their car? Of course not. 99% don't. So if you know how to, well, of course. But if you know how to, you can say, hey, I'll fix your car if you, treat me for whatever, or hey, if you can film this or take care of this abscess I've got, I'll help you with your car. I mean, it's things like this we have to prepare for. That doesn't take any money. That doesn't take any. The only thing it takes right now is your will to make that alliance, if you will. But have things you can barter, like baby formula, diapers, things that people don't normally think about, because there's a large segment of our listening audience that don't have small children. But you know what? There will be small children that will be in need of these things. And I'm not saying, hold others hostage, but you can help others out by being prepared yourself and being able to saying, look, if you know how to fix my engine here or my brakes, I'll be more than happy to pay you for baby formula or diapers or whatever you need. And that goes for cigarettes and liquor and even, things that you don't need. You're gotta be live there.
Get that engine fixed when you have no money for gas, or you have no way to get fuel. No, I'm just messing around. There is a lot of things to think about, but I think what we do to prepare nothing will be sufficient enough. We will not be able to prepare for what's coming. We will have to rely upon the Lord to put us in the right places at the right time to get through what's coming if we're going to endure. And
of course.
We can do our part in what we can do, not just for ourselves, but for other people. But really, we're going to have to have our full trust. And one of the things I was told was to not look down during the calamity, not look back during these calamities. You just keep moving.
Kind of like Lot.
Peter, when he was walking on the water and he started to see that, started to understand what he was doing, and he said, save me, O Lord, and Jesus grabbed him and said, O ye of little faith. Once he realized he was walking on the water, once he realized what he was into, he lost his focus and fell into the snare, really. And that's what we have to make sure we do is constantly keep our mind and ourselves moving forward, never looking back, because things are going to be rough and things are changing fast.
Well, very true. And again, I when I was walking my dog and I was thinking about all of this, I started to think about families. And if today would be, I don't know, 30 years ago for me, how would I handle this? One way that you could do this. Now, I know we all have, I'm sure you have, or most people have, change jars, where you throw your change in, and pretty soon you've got like 75 pounds of pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, whatever. One of the things I would do to kind of bring your family into this, make it kind of fun for them. People talk about buying silver. Well, folks, silver coins, especially the pre-1964 quarters and dimes and what have you, they've got silver in them. Okay, silver. They're made of silver. So make it a family event. Make it an adventure, if you will. And if you've got kids, say, hey, let's empty the change jar. Do it, before an emergency arises, and let's separate the change. And let's see who can find the pre-1964 quarters, the American quarters, or whatever the currency you might be listening to in your country that have an element of silver, and make it fun. Make it part of an adventure for your family. But again, for those of you who cannot afford silver, and I know how that is, look through your change jars, and you'd be surprised. I found 2 or 3. My wife had a jar of change in our bedroom, and there were 3 quarters that were pre-1964 quarters, and I was delightfully surprised, knowing that they're still in circulation. So I can't remember if it's like 5 or however many would make up like an ounce of silver, but it's a significant step toward your independence, folks. I just want you to understand what's coming, and this is kind of like an extension of yesterday's program. So just to recap, gasoline, put it aside. Oh, and one thing too, vegetable oil. This is something I didn't know. You can use it for cooking, but you can also the oil can be used to make diesel fuel. I didn't realize that. And the byproduct, further, you can use the byproduct to make soap, which, again, I did not know. And, of course, these are things you can study on your own. But open your mind up. Think beyond your limited, the fact that you're the center of the universe, because we all do that. We all consider ourselves the center of our thought process. And that's fine. But if you think beyond that and look beyond and kind of anticipate, just like boots, not only for yourself, for your wife, for your children, get good boots. Think of others as well, and make them a part of this adventure. And perhaps it might not be by doing that, by involving them. Perhaps they'll be able to see too that hey, things might get bad, so we have to prepare. So prepare, and that's what I want to say. So let's
getting into the news. Israeli-Palestine peace talks, 9-month deal goal. Israeli and Palestinian negotiators will aim to reach a final status agreement over the next 9 months to end their long conflict, the U.S. Secretary of State had said. John Kerry said in a meeting between the two sides would be held in either Israel or Palestinian territories in the next 2 weeks. He said this would begin the process of formal negotiations. Mr. Kerry said all issues would be on the table for discussion. They are on the table with one simple goal: a view to ending the conflict, ending the claims. Mr. Kerry said the parties were committed to sustain continuous and substantiated negotiations on the core issues that divided them. And this is talking about the Israeli-Palestinian peace plan. Well, I'll tell you something, there will never be peace in that region until...
There's not going to be peace in our lifetime or in the carnal world, earthly world.
Never.
No. And one more thing going, well, this is important. I believe that this is important. The destabilization that occurred, Joe, with the Arab Spring, we can go right back to QE2 and the economic maneuvers performed by the central banks. This is all part of this. Do you realize, folks, that the print or the initiative of QE1, QE2, where they printed more money, thus devaluing our money, was an element of was a causative factor for the Arab Spring. How? Well, by devaluing the dollar, the U.S. dollar, the third world countries that use the U.S. dollar, the people who live on $2 a day, and think about that. Well, they could not afford to buy their normal food, and therefore there were a lot of hungry people that engaged in uprisings. Tunisia, Egypt, elsewhere. This is part of it. This is part of the central banking control over what's going on in the Middle East. So when you hear, like Joe just said, about seeking peace in the Middle East, that's not even on the agenda of these globalists. They want this entire area to be in a state of perpetual war. And understand that the lie is so big when it comes to this.
Yeah, it is. And we have, in the American police state news, government nudge teams aims to influence public behavior. We've gone over some of the PDFs coming out of the government from shaping social norms and values through positive and negative reinforcement that they put out, and how to change things through rules and regulations to further, the positive and negative reinforcement. But now we have these nudge teams. Obama administration is pulling together a behavioral insight team to explore ways to encourage Americans to improve or change their behaviors. Examples of the so-called nudge program might include using commercials to convince people to save more for retirement, improve the energy efficiency of their homes. Not like they have a choice to do that. Choose healthy eating habits, or sign up as organ donors, according to FoxNews.com. Supporters of the nudge approach say there is value to using behavioral sciences to help achieve desirable social outcomes. The approach has already been tested with success in Britain, when the government managed to boost by 15% the responsiveness of late taxpayers simply by running the ad that 90% of people who paid their tax, simply by running an ad that said 90% of people paid their taxes on time. Yeah, sounds like something to really change people for the positive there.
Well,
good job, government.
Yeah, you know how far we've actually sunk in this police state news. It's even unfortunate we've got to have a category like that. But I just wanted to bring this to your attention, folks. Who are the people who are acting in supervisory capacities at the Department of Homeland Security, at DHS? Who are these people at TSA? Well, guess what? A piece of news. A suspended Homeland Security supervisor. This is out of Buffalo, New York. Entered a guilty plea. Are you ready for this? To the possession of sadomasochistic child pornography. Okay, Stephen Metz, 41 years old. Yeah.
I don't even want to know what that means.
Well, it's sadistic or masochistic. In other words, it's depictions of violence and sexual violence, if you will, against children. Over 600 images on this guy's computer. Stephen Metz, 41, pled guilty in front of U.S. District Judge William Scretany, who informed the Customs and Border Protection Supervisor. Now, he worked under the umbrella of DHS. He worked for the Customs and Border Protection. He said this judge told this guy he could face up to 10 years in prison and a fine of $250,000. Metz possessed more than 600 images and videos of child pornography on his computer. And not only did he just get his jollies off of that, he shared them with other individuals through emails. And some of those other individuals, according to my contacts in Western New York, were in fact members of the same Customs and Border Protection, as well as TSA officials and other Department of Homeland Security workers. These are the kind of people folks, who are being recruited into the system. Is there any wonder?
Well, we knew, the TSA, we reported on a story a while back, the TSA hired a ex-priest who was thrown out of his position for abuse of children. We know the Department of Homeland Security and the American government in a whole is really promoting this sort of thing behind the scenes. This is what they do some people do for their recreation. We have sick, evil, occultic people that are behind a lot of, people that are led by evil spiritual entities, and this is what is the result. We have these, and from the UK, we had someone on to talk about this too.
Yep.
These massive child sex rings that they have going on. There is a lot of information on this horrific subject out there, and to the lengths and depths that these go, using the Child Protective Services as an agent to kidnap children from people, to have them put in the position to be traumatized, kidnapped, and etc.
Well, remember what V said last night, the financial insider, that some of these high level central bankers and these players chanting Babylonian style prayers before the opening of the markets. There is a cult involved here. Now, folks, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the investigations I'm currently doing on my own here. How many of you listeners know the name Alisa? And I'm going to slaughter this last name, Dmitrieva. Alisa Dmitrieva. Ring any bells? Probably not. Well, Alisa was a 17-year-old girl. Her body was found by a dog walker on New Year's Day, last New Year's Day. Guess where? Sandringham Estate, which is where the Queen, where the royal family lives in London. Well, outside of London, I guess. Now, she was murdered, 17 years old. Now, she was born in she's Latvian born, and she was last seen on the 31st of August, August 31st. But they found her body on the grounds of the Sandringham Estate. Okay, not fine, but that's fine. Just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Okay. Well, there's more. Jimmy Savile. How many know that name, folks? Jimmy Savile, and you can do a search on him as well. He was he's dead now. He was knighted, by the way. He was kind of think of Elton John. Jimmy Savile was a English DJ, but television presenter, hugely big name in the UK. Rubbing elbows with the royal family, rubbing elbows with Margaret Thatcher, rubbing elbows with all sorts of British high-ranking royalty, as well as even politicians from all across the world. Well, guess what? Sir Jimmy Savile is now being investigated post-mortem for allegations of sexual abuse. Well, not even more than allegations; they're confirmed. But just running this pedophilia ring in the UK, involving celebrities, involving politicians, involving royalty, involving other people of high-ranking status, like other politicians all across the world. In fact, they just found, and you can search this if you want, they just found at his old office, picture an old dusty office, where there's layers upon layers of wallpaper and walls, plaster and whatever. But as they were taking down one of the some of the wallpaper, they found a long list of child sexual victims, child victims of the sexual dalliances of Jimmy Savile and others associated with him. Now, this guy has been elevated to almost celebrity status or this iconic status, but the reason I bring these names up, oh, and by the way, Jill Dondo, I believe is her name, she was a reporter for one of the UK stations. She was murdered, a death yet a murder that goes unsolved. This is back, I think, 12 years ago. I think it was in 1999 she was murdered when she started probing into some child sexual rings. But the reason I bring this all up, think about what V said last night. Think about the Babylonian chants. Think about, you hear, for example, people talk about the cremation of care, but what goes on in the Bohemian Grove. Do you think it stops? Do you think that stops at the edges of the Bohemian Grove? No, not at all. There is so much perversity, sexual perversity, as we mentioned about this Customs and Border Enforcement, this DHS official, Metz in Buffalo. Folks, this is an underlying problem. This is part of the satanic Luciferian ritualistic type of system that is propelling the DHS activities and propelling the TSA activities. And you might think, oh, no, you're taking it out of context. You're making something where it's not. No, you don't understand. As I've been looking into this, my goodness, I've been finding connections upon connections upon the connections to the occult, to child abuse, to child pornography, to child selling rings. This is very relevant to what we're talking about. But I didn't mean to digress, Joe, and take us off track. I did. But folks, you've got to understand how prevalent this is and how what the motivation is. These people are sick puppies.
Yeah, that much we do know and have known. The extent of which I'd rather not even venture into anymore. We have the American dream slipping as homeownership is at its 18-year low. The U.S. home ownership rate, which soared to a record high 69.2% in 2004, is back to where it was 2 decades ago before the housing bubble inflated, busted, and ripped more than 7 million Americans away from their homes. With ownership at 65% and home values rising, housing industry and consumer groups are pressuring lawmakers to make the American dream more inclusive by ensuring new mortgage standards designed to prevent another crash are flexible enough that more families can benefit from the recovery. Regulators at the close of the proposing a softened version of rule requiring banks to keep a stake in risky mortgages that they scrutinize, according to 5 people familiar with the discussions. Lawmakers currently shaping House finance are seeking to reduce the government's role in keeping rates affordable for risky borrowers while ensuring homeownership is within the reach of minorities and first-time buyers who could need to sustain the house recovery as borrowing costs rise from low records. Hitting the bottom is the subtitle here. It says the homeownership rate in the second quarter was unchanged from the prior 3-month period, according to the Census Bureau data released today. It will hit bottom at about 64% in the next year as families leave their 4 homes and enter rentals. This is from a London-based Capital Economist Incorporated. It is currently the lowest amount in almost 18 years, after averaging about 64% for 30 years through 1995. And that along...
Well, look. We know things are so bad. We know that our mortgages have been sold off. And who holds them, Joe? Who holds these mortgages that have been sold once and twice and 3 times? They're toxic assets in many cases, where people are upside down on their equity. And I've got to correct something here. It's not the value. And folks, please, if you do nothing else, I just wish I would have said this myself, made this video myself. Please learn the value between money and currency. But that said, once you understand that, you'll look at everything else differently. It's not the value of your home that's going up in price. All of us, people say, "Oh, my home, the value of my home went from 100,000 to 150,000 in 3 months," and then how people, the flip this house and all this, and how they make this obscene profit after they clean up a blighted property. Folks, understand, it is the devaluation of our currency. It's not that your home is going up in value, or that or that the cost of food is going up. You've got to understand the basic premise: the ability or the value of the dollar and your ability to purchase what you were able to purchase 10 years ago is being purposely, deliberately taken away from you. The thieves behind all of this are the thieves at the Federal Reserve, at all of the central bankers. If these people, ladies and gentlemen, if they would have lived back in the 1800s, they'd be hanging from oak trees. And that goes from Bernanke to Geithner to Greenspan to all of these idiots. And Mark Farber said something on central banker actions, by the way. Insane people don't realize they're insane. Oh, man. Look, folks, if you run into it, I had a conversation this morning with Steve Quayle, and we were talking about a number of things, including last night's program about what V had said, and he said it's getting more difficult, much more difficult, to talk with people about what is really taking place, to getting them to understand the concepts, because we have been so brainwashed. So our educational system, I believe, and you could take me to task for this if you want, but I believe our educational system, through the Department of Education, through that cabinet position created back, I think it was by Carter? I don't know. But we have been, this has been, you want a conspiracy? This has been a conspiracy to keep Americans away from the truth as to what's happening. We've got to understand that this country is a captured operation, and V said that too last night. You can look at the unemployment numbers until the cows come home, but the reality is we've got somewhere around 25% unemployment in this country, and you know why? It's because the government takes the numbers and they play with how they give you the numbers. Do you realize that once you fall off of unemployment, once you no longer receive benefits, you're not counted among the unemployed? Really? Every statistic that is given by this government is a lie. Not even a lie, but a damn lie. And you know what? They want you, ladies and gentlemen, to believe it. They think you are so stupid and so ignorant that you'll believe it. And then you've got these stuffed shirts, these bobble-headed pundits that don't know their butt from a hole in the ground, just reiterating what the government pushes out. The real fact of the matter is we are in much more dire straits than you can believe, or, well, I'm sure our listening audience can believe, but most people will believe or can believe or will or even want to believe. Unemployment is in the United States, folks, is closer to 25%. And I will, if you use the original method of calculation and include everyone that is unemployed yet of employment, age, and capability. No, I'm not talking about the disabled people. It's closer to, I think it's somewhere between 23 and 25%. That's reality. The homes that Joe was talking about, what was that number you had mentioned? Do you still have that there?
18-year low home ownership.
Okay. You've got our college age children exiting college, and this is one of the greatest scams perpetrated on the American public. With already straddled with $100,000 worth of student loans from some Ivy League college, where their brains get reprogrammed to believe the lie, and they can't afford a home. What do you think is going to happen? Well, obviously, it's going to affect the ability for these young people to afford a home, and also the deflation of our dollar precludes us. Normally, the rest of the population, the general population, from home ownership. Please understand the root causes of this. And the last thing I'll close with, because I've dominated this hour, and I apologize, Joe, but Keynesian economics is the root. I mean, a lot of this stems from the Keynesian economics, principles of Keynesian economics. And that goes from Nixon to today. And I didn't upload I was going to upload this August 15th, 1971 announcement by President Richard M. Nixon. And people think, well, he was a Republican. Folks, he was also an attorney, and his offices were where? Who did he share office space with? Yeah, that's right. He had ties to the Rockefeller clan, and I believe Kissinger's office. It was Kissinger or another person, or Brzezinski, one of the two. I don't recall, but shared the same office building. Believe me, folks, this is a conspiracy, and the conspiracy has been long in the works.
Right, in the governments and nations. I was doing some research this weekend about some different things, and the question in my mind came up, and what are nations or countries in biblical terms, and what does God think of them? Well, they're referred to as beasts. And in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 15, it says, "Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are counted as the small dust of the balance. Behold, he taketh up the isles as a very little thing. All nations before him are as nothing. They are counted to him less than nothing, and vanity." And this is where we have to, understand that.
So, are you saying then, I mean,
the allegiance to nations, to governments, to men, what men institute, is looked upon as terrible. And going back to the wisdom versus knowledge, we look at some of the verses that it talks about in the Bible of wisdom versus knowledge, and man's knowledge.
That's a great point.
You have man's knowledge establishing these governments, man's wisdom establishing their constitutions or laws, and that's why they're spoken of in the Bible as beasts. And these kingdoms they oppress the poor. They don't do things in a manner that is righteous, or would even, if nations were considered people.
Yes.
And we're talking about, eternal judgment here. America is, with what we do, with the drone strikes,
with the abortions, with all of that.
Yeah,
yes.
the deception, it is insane. And this is why people need to understand that we are in a time like there has never been nor will be ever again, and things are not.
Well, what about the time, because the big push here, and we're not thinking, folks, you and I and everyone, if we're guilty of one thing, it's being guilty of not thinking big enough, because the lie is bigger than we ever imagined it could be. what about the push, when you say there's never been a time like this, what about the time going back to the Tower of Babel? Because it seems like there's this push for a central globalization, the centralization of everything. What do you think Obamacare is about, for example? Obamacare is not about health care. It's about the centralization of records, of getting your data and having it all in one place, and then having the IRS as the enforcers, the enforcing element of Obamacare or the Affordable Health Care Act if you're offended by Obamacare. Isn't this, didn't we see this once before, and I guess it didn't work out too well with the Tower of Babel? I think that they're...
Right, because the men came together to try to make something reach into the heavens, and just like they're doing today, trying to make themselves these elitist types, transhumanists, so they can escape death. And we see the creations of men are trying to mag themselves above the creation of the Lord that the Lord has made, and that is why there is such a conflict.
Okay, and I just want to say this to the audience as well, listening audience, and folks, this is one more thing, because this kind of ties into what you're saying too. Biblically, especially biblically, with prophetic terms, I would, looking at this whole mess that we see, this is not the end, in my view. We are seeing the beginning of the travails that's about to take place. This is the beginning, not the end, but the beginning of the end. And the end is not a long or a short process. In other words, think of ourselves, we'll say, up in an airplane at 30,000 feet. In fact, you might remember KAL, Korean Airlines, that flight that was shot down, that contained that one of the passengers was a congressman by the Russian Air Force. And forgive me, I don't have the exactly when this took place, but I think it was a Korean airline jet or passenger jet that was taken down, and everyone perished aboard. But folks, from the time that missile struck the airplane until the time that plane hit the water, 13 minutes. Okay, so I guess what I'm saying to you is, in our case, the missile hit the aircraft. We are that Korean airliner. The missile has hit, the Russian missile has hit our aircraft. We're on our way down. And it's going to be 13 minutes before we actually hit the water. And it's going to be a descent, not a controlled descent, but at times there may be some ability to have some stability and control. Other times there won't be. And it's going to be a rocky way down. And by the way, there were people that survived that. When they hit the water, there were survivors. So what I'm saying to you is, this is not the end. This is the beginning. And we have to set our minds looking at that.
Yeah, well, there is no end when it comes to our soul, when it comes to our life. Even when we die, it is not the state that most people think it is. We die in our body, but our soul does live forever. And that's something that people need to think about and understand. And then furthering than that, understand where they want to go, where they will end up going. And each and every one of us has to work that out in our own life. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Tuesday, July 30th, 2013. We're going to be coming right back with our guest, David Vanderbeek. He is the 2004 man who was running for governor of Nevada.
2014.
Sorry. He's running for governor of Nevada in 2014. It's going to be an interesting conversation with him, and we'll be right back after these short messages. And the intro music, or the outro music, is delayed. There it goes. Okay, we'll be right back with David Vanderbeek. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Tuesday, July 30th, 2013. We are honored to be joined by our special guest, David Vanderbeek. He is running for governor of Nevada in 2014, and he has been making a lot of news waves across the alternative media. And with that, I want to bring on Mr. Vanderbeek, his site, NevadaGovernor2014.com. And he also is on Facebook. He is with us now. Mr. Vanderbeek, can you hear me?
Mr. Vanderbeek, welcome to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. You're up, my friend.
It looks like his Skype went in and went back out.
All right. Well, in the meantime, interesting man, by the way. Has a lot of good ideas, but I want to talk to him about what he thinks is taking place right now. I want to pick his brain about some certain things. And by the way, he's a friend of our friend Susan Price, priceforjustice.com. So it's kind of a neat arrangement, I think. Mr. Vanderbeek, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can, in fact. It's great to have you with us. Folks, you're listening to the 2014 candidate for governor of the state of
Nevada.
Nevada, right. I was going to say, in fact, I might have said Arizona erroneously, but the state of Nevada. Fantastic. Welcome to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, sir.
Oh, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, you've got some pretty big ambitions. What party are you running on, sir?
Well, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an independent. So the party is the Independent American Party. And so I really love the name of the party because, I mean, if there's two things that we need to emphasize, it's our independence and our sovereignty as a nation. So and as individuals. So that's the party. It's affiliated with the National Constitution Party, and it is actually a state party.
Fantastic. Okay, now a couple of things. You've got, folks, Mr. Vanderbeek is not some delusional person running for an office that he doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell in getting. Okay, he is, and I've known him to be very, very professional, very sound. I believe, sir, that you've got an excellent chance, and I'm serious about this. Of really upsetting the entire political system of Nevada by, perhaps even perhaps winning, and I suspect that you've got a good chance of winning because of the attitude of people. They're sick of this Republican Democrat get nothing done morass that we're in, and the states are key battlegrounds here. What happens, the governors of the different states, this is key. This is a very important position. Let me ask you this. What made you decide to run for governor and not, we'll say, the school board or mayor or whatever? What made you decide to focus your efforts on being governor?
Well, the original campaign that I think we all go through an evolution, and my evolution was first, awakening over a period of years. So there's an evolution process that we each go through. I think when we come from a true place in our heart, we gravitate to the proper course for our lives. So becoming part of the party in 2010, they asked me to run for office. I did it for 2010, and in 2012, I ran for U.S. Senate on their request. And what I learned in that campaign was I actually only spent $650, and I got 50,000 votes, or rather, I was permitted by the electronic voting machines to receive 49,000 votes, and that was in spite of some obvious voter fraud because my own family members in northern Nevada weren't able to vote for me because my name wasn't in the machines there. But that doesn't discourage me. That kind of thing. When I see the fraud and I'm not included in the debates or ignored by the mainstream media, and I know that the message is right and that we need to carry forward. So because of all the people that supported me and were able to find me through the matrix, so to speak, I decided to take that momentum and do what is unheard of, and that is to begin campaigning immediately the day after for an independent, because the problem with third parties historically is that they disappear in off years, and then they reappear magically for a few months around an election time. So just wanted to become a fundamental leader and help the Patriot movement grow. Now, why this office? Because it has a lot of sway, because it really gets the word out, and you can't underestimate the power of the internet. And when things start to go right, and you can see, for example, you're familiar with Alexa.com. You can go and you can compare Nevada Governor 2014.com to BrianSandoval.com, and you can know those are real polls. Those are real stats. My website dwarfs the current outgoing governor's website. So they can put all the fake and phony polls out that they want, but the real traffic is to ideas of truth. And so I encourage people to go to NevadaGovernor2014.com and then click on platform positions, and you can look over the platform. So there's a lot of motivating factors that go into it. One is it's just the right time. I think another thing that we always have to be mindful of in our service is that it's not ego-based. In other words, I didn't pick this because I want to be the governor and I see myself being the governor. It's more like, no, you know in your heart, if you're coming from a true place, where you're best suited to serve. And so this is a good fit for me. I'm not interested in president of the United States. I'm interested in governor because I'm interested in one state doing things right. I'm interested in one state showing how it can weather the storm that's going to overtake the federal government. I'm not interested in saving the federal government or saving the Federal Reserve note. I'm interested in saving Nevada from a federal dollar collapse. I'm interested in saving Nevada from the tyranny of the federal government.
I love it. Seriously, I love it. And folks, by the way, you can go visit our guest website, NevadaGovernor2014.com. That's NevadaGovernor2014.com. And look at, you can actually see our guest, David Laurie Vanderbeek. You can actually see him, his wife, his children. In fact, you know what? I'm not sure, though. You probably should put up a copy of your birth certificate on the website, or at least a layered PDF version. No, I was spent some time on your website today, and I just got some. I was interested in your positions, and I got to tell you, what you're doing is, bringing back to the mental state in America where all politics is local, but the state, the venue of the state. It's so important because what we're seeing is a train wreck with respect to this federal government is taking the states' rights and stomping all over them. And you wouldn't allow that, would you?
Well, we don't need them. We don't need the federal government. The state. So whether it's education, whether it's health care, whether it's transportation or airport security, or whether it's policing, whether it's welfare, whatever you name, we don't need them. The federal government is a parasite. Our founders never conceived of a nation or a union that would function as this one is, because Aldous Huxley said it really well. He said, the larger the nation, the less important or less powerful your vote becomes. And that's why democracy has to be pushed downward to the local level. And economically, because of the immediacy of the transfer of information that's possible now, there's absolutely no reason why a single person can't become an economy, which means that we can actually get to know the information so well that you can literally custom make your car or your gun or your clothes. Well, why not your politics? So politics is going to have to follow the economics, and the economics are going to crash through this old system. And that's why we're seeing them prepare a police state, because they think that somehow, they can steal the economy and then institute a police state. Well, the problem is that the that Black America isn't rioting. You know, the problem is that the so-called redneck America aren't storming the castle or storming the Capitol, because we have so much truth that we can disseminate. And as a politician, my job is, you know that there's a second collapse coming for the U.S. government. We know that. But our job and your job is we're providing the American people with an alternative vision for what can occur. And those states and those counties and those cities that pursue this vision and capitalize their resources locally instead of bundling them and sending everything to Wall Street to piss away, those communities that take back their land and resources and support one another at the county level. We have counties that have economies that are larger than nations. You know, Clark County in Nevada, you've got LA County in California. We have these huge counties that even the state government should become irrelevant to a certain degree. So as a governor, you know, I'm wanting to push that back down to the people. So that's the next move. The move is for individual sovereignty, whether the powers that be or the powers that were like it or not.
David, you are a very interesting guy. Your YouTube channel, the YouTube videos you put out, a lot of people really enjoy them. You were one of the first candidates running for an office, whether it be Congress, Senate, Governor, that has launched their campaign really from what I see as a social media and internet platform. How has that? Is that how this started? This attention you've been getting, this nationwide attention, is because of what you've been putting out on the social media?
Yeah, it was actually the day after the world was supposed to end. So it was back in last December that I put out a video, and it was a week after the Sandy Hook shooting, and the title of it was, "Did Obama order Sandy Hook shooting to get your guns?" Because he stood on the graves of those children from the moment after. And then once I started looking into the information and taking my time, there's lots of problems with the official story of Adam Lanza being blamed for that. So I just raised a bunch of questions. And I think putting the question that way, if anybody goes to YouTube right now, if you just go to YouTube and you go into the search box in YouTube and you search Obama Sandy Hook, it was my speech that was actually the #1 result over Obama's. I think it's the #2 right now. But there I am right next door to Barack Obama on the subject of Sandy Hook. And after that, then I prepared a second speech, which was if Obama sends police to take your guns, civil war. So the Second Amendment issue just on the YouTube channel was really what sent me viral. And then I happened to get the domain name. See, this is the internet piece that you're talking about, and that has changed politics. I got the domain name Nevada Governor 2014. So what's going to happen is when people Google Nevada Governor 2014, the first 150 results or so are actually all mine. So the establishment hasn't had to face probably a campaign like mine. It's probably unique in that regard of the ability to use Facebook, YouTube, and getting the proper domain name to launch it from there. And then the support of alternative media, alternative news that is becoming like I could say you're alternative, but you're actually more mainstream because the mainstream is losing their audience. So those component pieces, if we can, with those pieces, and then actually getting and then I was given a television show locally, which will get onto the mainstream over time. But breaking into the mainstream is really difficult. But you're right. There's no doubt about it that it's been effective. I mean, I refuse to be a Republican. I refuse to be a Democrat. And I'm sure they're going to continue to say, that an independent can't beat their combine. But my kids are going to know that I damn well tried.
I love that, because how many among us can say that we have taken that step, that first step, or put together an offensive to negate what Washington has done. We don't live under a royal subject, although it certainly seems as if we do. Our states have individual sovereignty. If under the Constitution, we live in a constitutional republic. Mr. Vanderbeek, what happened? Where are we right now in terms of? And I know that's kind of a large question or kind of a big question here, but what in the world has happened to America? Sure.
I mean, this is a great question. It's what I said poorly before. Let me say it better. You have the United States of America. It's way too big to be governed by a central government of this nature. We were contemplated as being nation states. And nation states, people self-segregate. They self-segregate by religion, by race, by culture, by desire. That's just the nature. And if you've been, this is interesting about being a constitutionalist, about being somebody that pursues the truth. It's like there's a kinship almost. It's almost like a family feel. Like I feel more connected to patriots than I do many of my own relatives. So what you're seeing the fracturing of the U.S. into different segments, and those states that, like Nevada is one of those states that's going to emerge independent, energy independent, currency independent, manufacturing independent. It's going to emerge that way naturally because of the demographic. It's Ron Paul country, except for when you get into Las Vegas, but Las Vegas has actual true liberals, unlike the phony Democrats who are just like the Republicans at the mainstream level. They just support different branches of tyranny. And so what America is a country that's fundamentally fracturing in these economic ways, because there's groups and there's communities that want to have constitutional law. They want to have natural rights. They want to have the rule of law. And then there are those communities that don't even know what those words mean. Detroit, Chicago, Miami, Washington, D.C. knows better, but they've soiled their own nest. So these cities and the communities will make the determination. They're choosing their own identity, and the only ones that will see. The reality is that this is the sad irony, is that the people who do not want constitutional law and thoroughly neglected it will be governed by the police state. They will. We can think and we can be worried as patriots. Oh, they're going to prepare the police state and the FEMA camps for us, but that really isn't going to materialize. It's not realistic, because they're going to have their hands full with the hordes of people that want their internet, that want their food stamps, that don't care about anything else. The Americans are really aggressive people when they want something, whether they've been decadent or not. So we're historically a very decadent but bloodthirsty group of people, which is why we've been free. So I can just see you're witnessing the slow, gradual, and it's going to come. It'll speed up, but I think this fracturing in our social sphere, and so we'll see. We'll see. But I mean, I know that certain Western states are going to be okay. I know Idaho is going to be okay because I grew up there partly, and I grew up in Nevada. I know rural Nevada is going to be okay. I know these people can police themselves. I know much of Utah can police itself because I know the people. I can't speak for other states because I just haven't lived in them, but I hear a lot of good things out of other states as well.
Folks, we're talking to David Laurie Vanderbeek, the candidate for governor of Nevada for 2014. One thing that caught my attention is the fact that he ran for state assembly back in 2010 and U.S. Senate in 2012. Now, in 2012, David received 49,000 votes. 49,000 votes, despite the being excluded like an unwanted redheaded stepchild from the public debates and polls, and he was ignored by the mainstream media. He had no campaign organization. As he said, $650. But what I in researching your street creds, basically, or your previous campaign, you mounted this single one-man campaign, and there was intense opposition to keep you down, to keep you muzzled, and yet incredibly, 49,000 votes is nothing to sneeze at. So you have got and present a threat to this establishment oligarchy system.
And it's important to reiterate that I didn't get 49,000 votes. I was permitted to have, because, like I said before, my rural Nevada votes were not counted, most likely, and that's why, that's the irony. One of the evidences of that is that most of my voters were Obama supporters, according to public policy polling. So, according to their stats, the reason why Shelley Berkeley wasn't the senator is because of me, because I took more Democrat votes. Well, that's probably, evidence of the fraud, besides that my own family couldn't vote for me in the machines. So yeah, you're right. And I didn't have a website because there's this relationship between, the goal wasn't for me. The goal is not for me to be a leader. That's what is the goal is for me to function in this society, in the human family where I'm supposed to function. And so if that means being a leader, then that's what I've accepted. Now, having said that, we're talking about a relationship between me and the people I represent. And so I was putting my feelers out, and what my goal and what my personal rule has always been is to tell the people the truth as far as I have it, and let the consequences follow. That's always been the goal. And because of that goal, people have always come around and said, you'll get nowhere, you'll never accomplish anything. Well, I changed the history of Nevada for almost nothing, for $650. And I want to contrast that, because we're talking about 1.3 cents a vote when my opponent spent $20 a vote. So they collectively spent $20 million and one of them lost. For $10 million, I changed, so I used $650 to beat $10 million spent by Berkeley. So knowing that the people were committed to what I represented, that gave me the strength and the desire to represent them even more and take it to the level of having a complete campaign, as complete as possible.
Very, very good. And I've got to commend you, because if you really think about what our guest is saying here, going up against the machine, this monstrous machine, you've really indeed have changed the course of history, if you will, but just from what you've already done. Now, looking forward, and if the Hagmann and Hagmann report has anything to do or can play any role in helping you become the next governor of Nevada, I'd love to do it, because your platform, your positions, for example, the Second Amendment, the nullification of gun regulation, kicking the federal government the hell out of the states, restoring lands to the Nevada lands to the people, and of course your understanding of the financial system, the free market system. None of this stuff is talked about on these goofy debates that the brain-dead, mind-numb public are treated to. I can just see you in a public debate, just ripping down, tearing through the barriers and really exposing what's going on, nationally. So I just want to say that we would support you, but go through some of your platform, or go through what is most important to you right now. Well,
we've covered, and let me just throw this one thing out at you, because I think we need to have a lot more candidates. And so, speaking of the platform, what my intent was to do was to create a platform that would become the template for all governors of all states. So really this, and let me say this website is the most popular governor website in the U.S., with the exception of rickperry.org, as far as campaign websites go already. And I have a higher global rating than him, but he has a higher U.S. rating. If you go to Alexa, you can look up rickperry.org and compare it to my site. Now, so and that speaks to the content. It's the content. And so if you're going to run, you can come to this campaign platform and you can adapt it. And that was the intent. You know, the number one priority of the campaign has to be self-defense. It has to be the Second Amendment. People feel that the First Amendment is the most important, but I mean, my opinion is there wouldn't be a First Amendment without a Second Amendment, because, you know, as I feel that we could equally say that freedom grows out of the barrel of a gun. It's that fundamental ability to defend yourself. So, you know, starting from there, once we've covered the Second Amendment and we can make sure, you know, that means we're nullifying gun regulation. We're rejecting gun registration, ammunition registration, firearm accessory registration. We rejected universal background checks for private gun transactions, and we defeated that here in Nevada. In fact, that was a piece of history that I helped make, because I let the current Republican governor know he was actually thinking of signing that law into law instead of vetoing it after he said he was going to veto it. And so I just let them know. I said, I think that's great, because if you sign that into law, then 80% of your voters will hate you. So we were able to put the pressure on the Republican governor to veto the law for universal background checks. That was a huge thing, because Bloomberg has sent his people from New York to lobby here and lie here. So the other thing is, you know, with firearms, we've got to get students back in connection with firearms and understanding that they're a tool. We've got to allow counties to determine what kind of security they'll have in their schools. Faculty should be allowed to carry concealed on campus. You know, the citizens of each county should have the power to vote on what kind of security presence they want on campus. So those are kinds of, that's where the governor can push the power back to the counties to have some self-government, and then we can look at what works best. Now, setting that aside, what most people are worried about is economics, and so you have to have some kind of real economic plan. And in the case of Nevada, most of Nevada is controlled by the federal government in terms of land and resources, and so I want to return the lands to the free market and to the state so that it can develop it. For example, you know, every state, and now that's not going to interest everybody, because a lot of states aren't in that situation where 90% of their state is controlled by the federal government. But every state could look at 0.5, because we have to get towards is a state banking concept. Every state should have a state bank that collects and accumulates all of the monies that are taken in by the government entities in the state, whether they're the universities or the court systems, the parks, whatever they might be, because then you can capitalize all that money locally and you invest it directly back into the state-owned businesses, small or large. And that's what North Dakota does. And North Dakota is the only one that didn't have a budget crisis. I mean, they continued to grow and have surpluses, even as Texas had a huge crisis. You know, people talk about how great Texas economy is, but they had a huge deficit. They had $1 billion deficit in 2008. But North Dakota didn't, because they took their land, they took their oil, and by the way, Nevada has big oil, just as big as North Dakota, and has huge reserves, which we don't have access to because Obama wants to give those to his buddies. And that's why it's so important for us to control our resources locally so that we can loan against them. And so when the federal government crash occurs, they can't just come in and take to cover their own losses, because that's basically what they do, is they will rape your state to cover their losses. And now that means is giving your money and selling your state off to give money to their banking buddies, to give money to their corporate buddies. So states can have state banks that can also accumulate gold and silver. States are required by the Constitution to pay their debts in gold and silver. States can also issue a gold-backed currency that competes with the Federal Reserve note, because the Federal Reserve note is pretty much doomed unless these central banks or these international banks are willing to write off major losses, and I don't think they're willing to do that, which means we've got to come up with alternative currencies. And at the same time, citizens need to be able to create currencies and use them in the free market. In other words, while the government is held to gold and silver backed currency, the free market should be able to use whatever it wants, as opposed to, businesses today are forced to use the Federal Reserve note dollar system. And the other thing that's really important is non-payment to the IRS, because one of the promises I've made is that once I take office, that I will no longer file IRS taxes, and I'll use my police power as the chief law enforcement officer to protect Nevada citizens from the IRS. And the reason why that's so important is that we get zero benefit. The theory of taxation is that when you take in taxes, that your government returns something to you. And the IRS, not only do we know that the IRS returns nothing because everything is consumed by the bureaucracy for income tax and interest on debt that we don't owe to big banks. So people are worried, okay, if we stop paying our IRS taxes, what would happen? Well, nothing would happen. The lights wouldn't go off. The water wouldn't stop running. The roads wouldn't go to potholes. The schools wouldn't shut down. The fire departments wouldn't stop. The police wouldn't stop answering 911 calls. Nothing would change because we get nothing for IRS taxes, which means it's a redundant agency. Furthermore, not only do we get nothing for those taxes, we now know that the IRS has been a tool of political oppression that was used by politicians in the White House to target patriots and constitutionalists and enemies of their monopoly on currency. So if we all stop paying the IRS tomorrow, what you would have is direct stimulus of over $1 trillion right back into the economy. And I encourage people to do business in cash, because IRS taxation is a crime, and so when you do business in cash under the radar, you're actually fighting crime by doing that, and that's what's kept America's government afloat, is the $2 trillion underground economy of people just doing business with each other. And we need to do more of that. And so I fully understand that is what must happen. That is what must happen.
The only question I have, sir, is if I could be your lieutenant governor. Wow. What you've said, and folks, please understand what the next governor of Nevada is saying. And, of course, we're talking with David Laurie Vanderbeek. I believe he's got a fantastic shot at being the governor of Nevada in 2014. But please understand what he's saying. He's giving all of us a lesson in history, and it's so important for all of us to know the history and where we've been, and we have to look back to see where we need to go. So I want to thank you for that. My goodness. But now the other aspect of this,
can I ask? Let me ask.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
The next thing that we can do, what I'm talking about, when you establish a state bank, and you can actually phase out taxation, because the government can take in more income through investment return than it can collect in taxes. And that is the win-win scenario. What we can do, and it's fully possible and always has been, was to create a win-win relationship between government and private enterprise and the general employees, the average working American. That was always possible. It was always possible to create a system where that would work. And instead, what we've devolved into is simply a predatory system. See, the way you get people to buy into success is showing how everyone can win. And that's possible. It's absolutely possible for everyone to win in this economic plan that I've laid out. And it's not my plan. It's just putting together the best ideas that people have been sharing and talking about in one place. I mean, people are worried about a couple things. Well, how am I going to pay my medical bills? How am I going to keep a roof over my head? See, we're all being put into survival mode. That's what I call it in therapy. I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I don't even know how people survive. I'm a professional, and so I make good money, but I have no idea how people survive with any dignity today, because I had to go to school for years and years to be able to do that, and I just don't know. And so there's so much pain there that this is what people are really worried about. We have to have a real economic plan that can pull us out of survival mode, because people can't even think about 9/11 was an inside job, or the Boston Marathon, or Sandy Hook. They can't even conceive those ideas, and they're not even concerned with that when they're worried about keeping their power on.
Well, that's true. Are we not consumed? The average American today, are we not consumed with working one, maybe two jobs just to keep the lights on and a roof over our heads? And isn't that by design, sir? That we've been made to do this, to keep our attention away from the real issues and the real truths that you speak about. I mean, it's a working family today, or a family today with children. My goodness, you need to work between the husband and the wife. You've got to have four jobs, just to keep the bills paid, and that takes away, of course, from the paying attention to what's really going on in Washington and in your various other states as well. I mean, it's by design, I think, and we've been sold a lie. But you mentioned some things that's very interesting. You're not buying the official narratives of the various issues we've had from 9/11 forward, and my goodness, that alone should separate you in a good way, because it sounds like you're seeking the truth, or you want the truth to be told over what's taking place. I'm sensing that. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, the use of primarily, I think the thing that I found the most upsetting. I don't find it as upsetting now because of my work and exposing it, but it was very upsetting to me that our government would use terrorist attacks to advance a police state agenda, and because what we've got a group of criminals in the corporate world and the political world and the financial world who have stolen everything, or who are trying, in such a way that at the same time they're establishing a police state, so that the only economic sector that's growing is jobs in the police state. And this was borne out in the West Virginia Jamboree, where I talked about my concern for terror drills and false flag activities at the National Scout Jamboree, and the response of the West Virginia Adjutant General was that they were creating jobs through bringing in all this military and essentially declaring, it was in reality martial law over 7 counties. So those 7 counties were under martial law, and it was declared a state of emergency. And the governor of the state signed the executive order granting the Department of Homeland Security governance over that area of the state for I don't know how long it's going to last. I mean, it was supposed to be for the Jamboree, but from the reports that I get from the locals is that is a new military site, and we don't know exactly what it's been used for, but I have some ideas. I can speculate.
Interesting. Okay, well, okay.
But that my point is that the police state is that their justification for it now is that it's a growth sector of the economy.
Exactly.
I mean, that drives me insane that they would say, oh, okay, they crash your economy, and then the only job where your kids can get your kids can get is to be drafted in the military, go into law enforcement, go into cybersecurity for the government. That's very disturbing to me, because that is no economy. being a police state is not an economy. It's a takeover, and it's an occupation.
Exactly. It's a jobs program. Terrorism has become a jobs program for America, which is troubling if you think about this.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
That is exactly, you said it. Terrorism. Yes, we have been terrorized. They've used they crash. I want people to really grasp the connection between crashing your economy at the same time they orchestrate a police state. If you can understand that, that's why you buy into it. That's why you don't fight back. That's why, because people are in survival mode, then they go, oh, I'm a family man. I got to pay the bills. I got to grope people. I got to put on these gloves for the TSA and put my hands in your pants. Please understand, I'm just trying to take care of my family. And people really do that. I chose not to do that. I stayed in school. I suffered immensely. My family suffered immensely. We went through grad school. We used welfare. We survived it. And now we pay it all back, and we give back. And that's the beauty of it. That's the intent, is that you use the student loan to get through school. But you were saying it's a huge fraud, because you have to roll the dice and hope that you selected a sector of the economy where there's a job. And I was fortunate enough to do that. I didn't know that mental health was going to be the next, growth sector for the police state. But as it turns out, I actually can do patriotic work because I'm contacted by people who are demonized in courts of law now. I can help people with family court stuff. I can help patriots who are being deemed insane because I have that power, because I have the license to be able to evaluate people and report to judges. That's just an interesting dynamic of that I was blessed, but I had to stick to it, and it's hellish to go through the education system. And they already put you through the ropes, and then to be saddled with all the huge debt, and then to not have a job, it's really a nightmare.
Yeah, David, I want to jump on this topic if we can. Agenda 21. We know that the president laid out his new presidential climate action plan. We see the new laws coming out, the Regulatory Reauthorization Act. All these United Nations-based initiatives that they are launching here in the United States. We'll say you are elected a governor in 2014 for Nevada. What would you be able to do to keep that out of your state? I mean, with the full force of the federal government against any states that are trying to not comply with their regulations. We see this through the Obamacare mandates, and many other instances. What do you think you would be able to do to stop this from hitting your state?
Well, we have to show the hypocrisy, okay? We're not talking, they say that they care about the environment. We just have to show how much they don't, because these are people who worship Monsanto. We've got to talk about how they don't care about the environment. They protect the wholesale destruction of our species, because these same people we're being engineered through our food. Now, if we could get people a piece of land and we could say, hey, you can grow your own food on this land. You can grow your own medicine on this land. We can have real organics on this land. There's a mentality that people don't want to be a part of the land, that they don't want to be part of the life cycle. Look, I can tell you right now, we have nature deficit disorder. People are disconnected from the earth. People are disconnected from the life cycle, life and death. My children, my 4-year-old went out with me yesterday to bury a dead bird that died on our patio. So I want my children to understand this is what, and she saw that ants were climbing into it, and she's like, there's ants, what are they doing? And I talked about the life cycle, how God made the ants to clean up things that died. And so we went and buried the animal. People don't have connection to nature, and so that life cycle. And if we can get people back out into nature, they will want to be a part of it. And we've got to explain to people, look, Agenda 21 is about and Nevada understands this perfectly, because all it's about is cutting you off from the earth. And we're becoming sedentary creatures that are basically video files, because we just are attached to screens. And so we're getting absorbed into a a surreal reality or a virtual reality, which makes it more difficult to respond. I can tell you clinically, it makes it more difficult to respond to the real world. That's been proven with pornography, that men who become addicted to that become less responsive and end up with erectile dysfunctions, for which the same companies then sell you a pill. And so the same thing with video games. People get these immediate rewards with video games, but then they don't go out into the real economy and get those immediate rewards, so their levels of frustratability are very high, and it's like ADHD on a disc. You know, you just gave yourself ADHD and you lost your work ethic. But if I have no doubt, I have 100% confidence that if the people are awakened to the reality of their terrible situation and how they're being dehumanized, because we are part of the earth. We're from the dust. We're creatures here in the life cycle. We will humanize people again. We'll get them back on farms. We've got to get back to industrial hemp. We've got to get back to medicinal plants and being able to grow your cures in your backyard. We can get people back to organics. We can help them understand that Monsanto is introducing DNA into your body and essentially mutating you. One of the things that I've observed, and I talked to my wife about, is I continue to see the same kind of body types over and over and the same kind of psychological profiles in people. There literally are, I really am becoming more and more a believer that we're being genetically engineered as a species into different role types almost. And that's through the food, it's through the medicines, because there really is our DNA fragments. That's a fact. There are DNA fragments in the food that rewrite your DNA, and that causes you to grow and become actually a different person. So if we can get people to realize that, and they do, I think people can tell, I'm sick, I'm miserable. I'm willing. And here's another thing, Joe. I want this to be understood. I've learned through years of being a therapist that people do not come to therapy until they're in a crisis. Most people don't. You're different. I'm different, because we believe patriots are different. We see the bad days coming. But the vast majority of humanity don't come to therapy until they're in crisis. So when people get sick enough, they will wake up, and they will wake up fast. And I think that they are, 4 out of 5 adults near poverty. I think the crisis is here. I think they're ready to come to therapy.
You're right. The crisis is here. And if I can get your opinion, we're about to reach the top of the hour here in about 4 minutes. On Fukushima, I don't know how much research you've done and looked into this, or if any at all. Do you see Fukushima as almost an extinction level event, a population killer?
It's affecting the residents of the West Coast, and of course your state, Nevada, primarily. Yeah. Well, yeah. What are your thoughts on Fukushima? It's kind of a left-handed question, I think, but nonetheless important. The radiation that's coming into the United States, and I mean, just your thoughts on that.
Well, I can tell you, oil and coal never did to my family what radiation did to them. One day my grandmother was with us. My family, my mother and my grandparents, they watched the atomic bombs go off out here. So the government's rule is very simple. They deny any accountability for all the murders and all the destruction. Going back to the environmental question, right? These people don't give a damn about the environment. They killed and poisoned generations of Nevadans here. So we're going to make them pay. We're going to make them pay to clean it up. We're going to go back into the land. Well, actually, we need to go back into the land first and just assess the damage and look at the poison and look at how we're going to reclaim the land and heal it. So those people over in Japan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the people over in Japan, they're going to lose family members. They're going to lose opportunities. They're going to be sick their whole lives. My mother was supposed to die when I was 11 years old, but instead of listening to just the mainstream doctors, she decided she didn't want to die, and so she pursued any kind of health information she could from any source. She literally listened to everybody And so she's alive to this day. She has chronic health problems, but that has a lot to do with the radiation exposure in southern Nevada. And it's to her credit, she raised me to pursue the truth. That's kind of where that came from, is that I'll go wherever the truth goes, I'll go. Whatever the truth is, I want the truth. And whatever the consequences are irrelevant. I'm going to tell people the truth as far as I have it. And those people in Japan and everywhere around the world deserves to know the truth. There may be ways for us to clean up that environment. I believe there are. I believe there will be. I believe they're probably suppressed just like everything else. Energy technologies are suppressed, and, better medicines are suppressed because they're just not as profitable for the people who want to enslave the population and cull the human herd. I do believe in eugenics. I do believe that population reduction is absolutely an agenda. I think that's borne out, daily. So particularly in China, China's a great example of eugenics and the collapse of. They're gonna have a collapse in their society because of their one-child policy. That's guaranteed.
Interesting, you mentioned that, and that's exactly right too. That one-child policy and eugenics. I mean, boy, people don't understand. Once again, the lie.
Can you imagine growing up in a society of predominantly male-only children? Socially?
That's wrong on a lot of levels. I got to tell you,
it's so bizarre. I mean, it's only going to end in destruction. They can't replace their population. They won't have the workforce to provide for the aging parents. So yeah, they're going to have death and destruction there. They've already had it. 300 million abortions, 190 million sterilizations. I guess that's what they're into. So death and destruction, they're going to have it.
Wow, very interesting. You've got some interesting and very knowledgeable positions on things. And let me ask you this. We're at the top of the hour here. Can you stay on with us for another segment here? Perhaps we can take a couple of calls from your area?
Absolutely. Well, as long as you want, I'll stay with you guys.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Because, folks, I think I really do think, Joe, we're making history here in a sense, because Mr. Vanderbeek he's got a great shot. I really do. He's got a great shot at being the next governor of Nevada.
Yeah. And I think he's the first politician we've had on our show.
Well, I wouldn't even call, you know what, a politician is degrading. Yeah, first
running for office.
Running for office.
Running for office or in office.
I use the term, I've always used the term steward, because I'm a steward in that I'm just representing a group of people and a region of land, and that's eventually going to go away. And I hope, regardless of whether or not I'm in the office, I am the steward of Nevada. I know that that's a spiritual commitment that I've accepted. So in some ways, regardless of whether I take any office, I know that I'm driving the population towards freedom. Some of them I'm dragging along, like in the allegory of the cave, but others, we're converting them. Nobody wants to come out of the cave. If you read the allegory, they all want to stay in the dark, look at shadows.
So you've read Plato. Yeah, I did a lengthy report on the allegory of the cave. Interesting, folks. You're listening to David Laurie Vanderbeek, Nevada Governor 2014.com. That's Nevada Governor 2014.com. He's our very special guest tonight on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. He's agreed to stay, take some of your phone calls. The number, should you like to weigh in, ask Mr. Vanderbeek anything. The number is 661-244-9839. We're going to give particular attention or a preference to those residing in the state of Nevada. That's 661-244-9839. Once again, our very special guest, Mr. David Laurie Vanderbeek, Nevada Governor 2014.com. That's Nevada Governor 2014.com. We're right back after these messages. Stay with us.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 3 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Tuesday, July 30th, 2013. We were joined by our very special guest, the running for governor in Nevada 2014. His site is, what is it, Nevada Governor 2014?
Yep, you got it.
David Vanderbeek, very pleasant guest, a breath of fresh air in the world of politics. At 661-244-9839 is the number to call in if you want to ask Mr. Vanderbeek a question. And I'm going to start off by asking this to you, David. If you are in the lead in the polls, we'll say, regardless of what the news polls say, we'll just go by the numbers off the internet and the attention you're getting. Are you worried about, or do you have measures in place to monitor voter fraud or the ability to screw around with the machines and change a state's vote that would not be in your favor?
What I've said to that is I've said to everyone is that I believe that the next move in patriotism is hacking voting machines. The Battle of Athens, Tennessee was a battle of veterans taking back the ballot boxes, and so people really do need to hack the voting machines to find out what the true results are, identify fraud. They have every right to do that legally. So I would just say hack the voting machines and find out what the true results are. If there is tampering, the evidence will prove it, and let the results go where they may. We have to prove, and I like to say it that way because the voting machines were put in place specifically so that they could carry out fraud. I know that we make references to the zombie public, but it's not even clear what the public votes for anymore. So we can't. I don't believe that human beings elected Barack Obama president. I believe the machines elected him president. So I would just encourage people to get behind the movements to hack the machines and then get back to paper ballots.
Yeah, we see that. I agree with you that we will never know the real voting outcome of, I'd say, the last few elections since these electronic voting machines have been in place, and there has been an ability of the people who control these machines, and we've seen this last year that they've been out of country interest, and that's very troublesome.
Of course.
Hey, Mr. Vanderbeek, I got to ask you this. When did this country go off the rails, if you will? That's part one. And part two, who in the world is in the White House, do you believe? I mean, fire away.
Well, you could make a lot. You could say 1913. You could say the pass of the Federal Reserve Act and income tax. You could say. You could go back to the Civil War and all the changes that Lincoln made to the country and having a standing army but I think for our era, I think that you have to go to 9/11 if you're going to say there's one event that really started, because out of 9/11 we got DHS, we got the Patriot Act, we got the global war on terror, we got the TSA in your wife's bra. So really, there were all these important things that happened historically in terms of corruption, going off the gold standard and things like that. But I think for our era, for our own negligence, it was definitely 9/11. Now, for me, I had a different experience of 9/11 because I had studied as an undergrad. My first degree was philosophy, but before I was a philosophy major, I was a political science major. And so when my professor, J. Kent Marler, he's like this really religious guy at a Christian, college, and he says in poli-sci, he says a sentence that changed my life. He said, "Intelligence is amoral," and then he explained that meant that spying was essentially amoral, and that you killed whoever you needed to kill, you slept with whoever you needed to sleep with, you lied, you stole, you did whatever you had to do for that job. And that changed my life because I actually changed my major after that to philosophy so I could understand humans better. But before that, I went to the library and started studying the CIA. And so I was well aware of all of our death squads and the things we'd done all over the world. And one of the special forces interviews I watched of a man who served in Guam, he said, we broke every law of God and man, and I thought we were going to hell. And so watching that, I knew that our government had been doing these things all over the world. And so when I observed 9/11, the spiritual sense and the sense that I had observing it was that this was a natural consequence of the behavior of our own government. And I didn't know that 9/11 was partly perpetrated, at least at a minimum, partly perpetrated by elements in our own government. That didn't come till later when a family member who actually is I actually have a relative who's one of the best hackers in the nation, who was actually hired by DHS and did trainings for people at the Pentagon, and he provided me with the documentary, and he had us all watch it in 2005 at Christmas. He had us watch Endgame. He had us watch America Freedom to Fascism and Terror Storm, and that's always that's how I spent Christmas in that year. And so going back, it was that revised my understanding. But in answer to your question, the first question, I'd say 9/11, and then as far as your second question, we just don't know a whole lot about Barack Obama. It appears that he has a double life. It appears that he has yet to produce a valid birth certificate. It appears that his father is Frank Marshall Davis, who was the Chicago communist pornographer organizer fellow, who he actually looks like and who took him under his wing. It looks like that was his real father. So he probably is an American citizen. I mean, granted, but everything about him is a lie. I think the man is a fraud, but he's a. If I were to diagnose him, I'd say that we have a narcissistic sociopath or psychopath in the White House, a man who probably has an active sex life, though not with his wife, an active drug life. Narcissists have a very low empathy. They can't tell when they're failing. You were talking about this earlier in the show, about how these types of leaders, they can't even tell when they're failing. I think you said it, and I resonate with that, because narcissists cannot tell that they're failures, but they're supremely insecure people, because, and a lot of it deals with their childhood. So we're talking about people, and if I were to diagnose our government, it is a narcissistic, psychopathic. It has, those traits, the absence of empathy, the absence of concern for other people, the self-aggrandizement, the self-praise. Even in the midst of their complete failure, they can't even register that they're total failures. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, look at what's taking place in New York City with Weiner and Huma Abedin.
Controlling guns for the children. I thought they're laying out their action plan to save taxpayers' money on their energy bills. I mean,
sarcasm there. Yeah. Let me ask you this. If I were to have told you, and folks, this might sound like a racist statement, and if it does, you're just going to have to deal with it. But if I would have told you, sir, that on 9/13 of 2001, September 13th of 2001, that our next president would be named Barack Hussein Obama, would you have believed me?
I wouldn't have had any clue who that was, and I wouldn't have imagined that. That says a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, the reason I asked that question is because the fact that you are not affiliated with the Republicans or the Democrats, and then I look at the two-party system as being this two sides of the same coin, where they're both a captured operation.
Yep.
Now, let me digress and kind of ask you about this. Are you afraid, sir, as your profile is raised and as you become more popular, and you will, I guarantee it, are you afraid for your life, for the life of your family? Because you are going to be rocking some pretty big boats in the harbor of political largesse and this oligarchy here. Are you concerned?
No, not particularly, because I have a respect for an understanding that the mafia has taken over the government, and the mafia have their own rules. Gangs have rules. I've worked with gang members, so in a mafia or gang mentality, you don't betray one another. You take a death covenant or a death oath that if you betray that, then you're in danger of your life. You forfeited your life. Now, I have no dealings with the mafia. My family never has, and I've kept my life clean so that I could be naked before the intelligence establishment. I'm well aware that they can map out my body and keep track of me through my direct TV and my Samsung smartphone. You know, I'm well aware that they can track everything that I do and know everything I do with my wife and everything I do with my kids and track all my finances. And so my goal was just to keep my life as spotless as possible. And so now, having said that, if something were to tarnish me, then I would just say, you know, then my political capital is spent and I'll go on and do something else with my life. You know, you can be destroyed in a number of ways. You could be destroyed socially. You know, they could go after your reputation, and they could try to assassinate your character. And so I'll just take it in stride. I'll serve as long as I can serve. I don't feel any sense of mortal danger because I really do want to. I go straight at people. I just let them know if you're committing crimes, you need to stop. If you committed very serious crimes, there's likelihood that you'll do some jail time. So I'm just very straightforward with people, and I'm not double-crossing anybody. I think, you know, you look at Abraham Lincoln, it's not clear, you know, what was going on there. JFK, his family had some questionable ties. So when people make deals, you have to answer for that at the end of the day as a man. If you make a deal with somebody in the mafia to get their help or get their funding, then you make a covenant with them, and so you have to live by that and die by that. I haven't done anything like that, and I won't. So we'll just see what happens. My job is to serve as long as I can, you know, each day. When that's over, it's over.
Okay. And folks, if you are from Nevada, or if you have a question for our guest, Mr. David Laurie Vanderbeek, hopefully the next governor of Nevada, you can find him at his website, nevadagovernor2014.com. Folks, if you got a question, comment for our guest, 661-244-9839. I did get a note here that our phone system is acting frumpy, whatever that might mean. Okay, so isn't that interesting? But give us a try. That's 661-244-9839. It's kind of well, you're familiar with this, kind of a game of roulette if you'll get through. But in the interim here, we've covered a lot of ground that anyone running for office would not normally cover. From 9/11 to the Federal Reserve to states' rights and gun ownership. My goodness, you know, I just have a feeling you would turn this established system on its ear. By the way, it's refreshing to hear your position on issues. Do you think, though, sir, that you've got to understand where I'm coming from with this question. Do you think that you will be allowed, and understand that allowed to even pose a threat to the political establishment by,
okay, yeah, good question. Well, what you've got to look at is people like yourself, or in the personality style, you have challengers, you have. Okay, think of a drill sergeant. Think of a person serving as a police officer. Think of a person who's serving in silence as a Navy SEAL, or somebody who's serving in the Pentagon. Those people in the government have to make a decision. Do they want to continue to work for scumbags who they totally detest, you know, like the Secret Service protecting the president? Do they want to continue to work for people like that, or do they want to have some alternative? And I think, speaking of people who need to have a come-to-Jesus moment, they're going to lose everything. The people in the establishment in the lower levels that work for the people at the top have to recognize, wow, these people really don't know what they're doing. They really don't care. They really are drugged out. They really are on Prozac, so that they have no affect, and they have, they're flat, and they don't have any ideas, and they really are incompetent. So as the people in the power structures and the bureaucracies see that, look, the people in the FBI are going to, and the DHS that do their jobs day in, day out, they're going to have to decide, hey, do we want to participate in assassinating people like this guy, or do we want to hear what he has to say? I mean, I should hope that they monitor me every day so that they can get a full flavor of the difference, So we're just here giving people an alternative, and I think that they're going to have to decide. And I think that my ability to go carry forward to a large degree, I mean, my website hasn't been shut down. My YouTube channel hasn't been shut down. I've gotten some censorship, but really not a whole lot. They've let me go forward, and I think that has to do with that can be being humored, or it can be that there's a genuine dispute that people agree with what I'm doing in the government, and they want to protect it. They want it to be allowed. So
interesting. I do have a question from a Nevada listener not wanting to call. This is for Kelly in the Clark County, Nevada.
Oh,
okay.
Hello, Kelly.
And she writes,
okay,
as a Christian, would you do anything to the okay, this is quite a lengthy email, but as a Christian, would you do anything? How would you regulate the prostitution industry or would you do anything to the prostitution industry in the business in Nevada?
That's a tough question. I mean, I'm absolutely opposed to prostitution. I believe it's immoral. I believe it's unhealthy. The unfortunate thing is that the people have to decide. I'll campaign against it. I'll campaign against that. But we have a very serious problem with people prostituting themselves. At the extreme end of things, people sell their bodies. They sell them in a variety of ways, whether it's at an actual brothel. But there's lots of ways people sell their bodies and trade their bodies sexually for drugs. One of my clients was a girl who was brought from Mexico to be a sex prostitute slave in Las Vegas. And so the first thing we've got to go after is everything that's already illegal. Please, can we just enforce the laws that we have and go after these people and put them behind bars? At the same time, this is why it's so important to create a real economy so that these girls and boys feel like they have something that they can do other than selling their body, right? Because the motive there is I'm selling my body, I'm prostituting myself in exchange for money. And so if we could give these people an alternative economy, that would do much to curb the demand. And then, we've got to look at promoting a real family. See, I want people to choose what is right and what is healthy voluntarily rather than through coercion because, speaking from a religious perspective, God lets us have our freedom to destroy our lives. He believes in the freedom to fail. Satan, on the other hand, believes in coercion so that you are forced to do what he says if he believes it's right or wrong. I don't want to ever force people to do what's right, but I want to campaign for families. I want to campaign for parents to stay together, for the government to provide therapy services to young couples so that they can get their marriage together and get married and stay married. And so we don't have these broken homes. And we should be providing social services for families to stay together so they can transition out of those hard times. Those kinds of things where women can support each other as single mothers and help each other with childcare as they get their education and motivating them to do that so that they don't feel inclined to be prostitutes. So you've got to give people an alternative vision. It's not that you just go in and say, no more prostitution, no more gambling. No, you give people an alternative because people have property rights and they have rights over their bodies. So Yeah, I'm giving you a vague answer. I understand that, but in some ways I'm not. I want to create real market alternatives and opportunities for people so that they don't sell themselves out.
Well, very good, and thank you, Kelly, for that question. And it's kind of a 3-paragraph email, but she does state that it would be a very difficult situation. That she acknowledges that fact because of the just how entrenched everything is, and
well, think of gambling. Gambling is a property right. If you come from the libertarian perspective, gambling is just a property right. But we have all the science and the research to show it doesn't strengthen communities. So my job is to take science and present it to the people and say, please, could you look at the truth and look at the real science and make your decisions based on the truth. So the job of the politician or the steward is to just present the truth and let the people govern themselves.
Yeah, very good. And David, I want to ask you this about your family. You have a beautiful family. I see the picture on Skype. It looks like you have 5 kids. Are those all your kids?
That's right. One marriage. We've been blessed. Yep.
So you didn't rent those children for a photo op, right? I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah. How does your wife feel and your family feel about you running, about your safety while running, and going against the grain of politics while being in that realm?
Well, my family are all 100% behind me. My wife's family was instrumental in waking me up. They're always giving me information and encouraging me on. My wife doesn't feel unsafe. I don't bring this, just like you don't bring your work home with you. I don't bring my politics home with me either. So when I come home, I'm home. And my children, I'll talk to them about basic things about the Constitution, but they're not burdened with any of this stress. They're just kids growing up. And, if anything were to happen to me, my wife would, she would just take my place. She's very well spoken. She's very wise and intelligent. And she's teaching me right now all about GMO food, even more than I understood. So she, all the people in my family, if anything were to happen to me, they would just pick up the baton and they would carry forward. It would make them more aggressive than they are now.
Well, you're muted. All right, there you go.
Yeah, sorry about that. I press buttons when I shouldn't press them. This is not a conversation, folks, that we're having with your average political candidate for political office. I truly believe that this is a conversation we're having with a gentleman who cares about the fate of not only his family, but your family, the fate of the republic, the constitutional republic, and is doing something about it by running for office, public office, and that is the governor of Nevada. Now, let me ask this. Do you have any designs? Let's say you're successful, and I hope you are, and you do become governor of Nevada. Is that where your political aspirations stop, or or perhaps would this springboard into something more?
Well, I was adopted at birth, and I'm actually part Mayan Indian, and so if I could do anything next after that, it would be working on helping Latin American countries in their governments to be more accountable for their collapse into this country. So, once I've helped Nevada, if I had my wish list would be to help, Mexico, down towards Colombia. That's the edge of the Mayan Empire, to help those people from whom I come to be free again, the way people were free once in America, so that they can enjoy the same blessings that we have here. Because when we talk about immigration today, and that's one topic we haven't talked about, immigration, unfortunately, has become synonymous with just talking about the Mexican border. And the real question there is, what are we doing to help these refugees hold their governments accountable for imploding into our nation? See, all the limp-wristed or whatever you want to call them liberals, that are bleeding hearts, should agree with me that what we should be doing is talking about how those governments need to become nanny states and take care of their citizens. They should agree with me on that we need to go down there and help them understand the value of social welfare. On the other hand, the diehard isolationists should recognize, look, it's in our financial interest to help those countries, whether we need to go to the border with our military and establish it, whether we need to enlist them in their own army. Historically, that's the history of Mexico is that it's never had a good government, whether it was the Mayans or the Aztecs or the Spaniards or the Mexicans. They've never had a good government. It's always been bloodthirsty and murderous. So my hope for them would be at some point that I could help them to achieve what America achieved, so that they can stop coming here, because they have paradise there. They have everything that it could be a wonderland of wealth and opportunity in Mexico, but it's not. So I would go south, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the one thing that we didn't touch on, and you're right, is immigration. What I believe, sir, and I guess it's kind of inconsequential what I believe, but I'll just throw my 2 cents in here anyway. I believe that what we're seeing is, by design, the balkanization of America. There's no incentive for the illegal immigrants coming across, or the legal aliens coming across. There's no incentive here for them to assimilate into society. America was built on immigrants. However, they want to be a part of the constitutional republic. Now what we're seeing is this intentional balkanization of our country. Do you agree with that statement? And if so,
yeah,
what would you do about it?
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, you have to remove the incentive in a market. You have to create a market for something else. I talked about that earlier. And I think when I talk to Mexicans, they don't actually, if they could prosper in Mexico, they would stay there. So we're talking about desperate people. I refer to them as refugees because we can call them illegal aliens, but they're fleeing collapsing states. But, I have in front of me this story. IRS sent $46 million in refunds to 23,900 unauthorized aliens at one Atlanta address. So that's you're right. They have every incentive to game the system, and so it's clear that the IRS is being used as an agency to induce and reward illegal immigration. Now, my grandparents, on the Dutch side that I was adopted into, they came to America after World War II, and they didn't come in illegally. They had to have a sponsor, and they had to wait their turn. So I don't have any problem telling people that they need to, if they want to immigrate, they immigrate legally. At the same token, on another side of the family, there's the head of immigration in San Diego told one of my relatives that even though they'd done everything right to bring a family member across, they told them to bring this person across illegally because they were never going to get in legally. That was the head of immigration in San Diego. It's a true family story.
Wow.
So you're right. I mean, it's by design that it's difficult to immigrate legally, which has created a segment of people that, they're reoccupying these lands, and they're very, unfortunately, ignorant of freedom. There are people who are living at the poverty level. So that's how they're being welcomed in to occupy. Yeah, it is an occupation of a new demographic.
Wow. Okay, interesting. But we could do a whole show on what you just spoke about. Unfortunately, I got to tell you, our phone lines are down. We apologize for that. So, having said that, we can't entertain any questions from callers out of Nevada. But isn't that strange how that works? And not conspiracy-minded, Mr. Vanderbeek, at all. But your website, and I want to thank you very much for coming on and telling all of America. In fact, our broadcast is global, so everyone listening from Australia to Alaska, that what you're doing, because folks, this man can change the course of our national history through his efforts in one state, and then having the template on his website for other states as well. And I think it's a great template. So it's fantastic. I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you're doing. My goodness, it's just incredible. So now, having said that, we're going to give you the last word. What would you like, in closing, what would you like to tell the American people?
Well, I would just tell you all as individuals that if you commit to following the truth wherever it goes and living your life according to true principles, and then you commit yourself to serving unselfishly, that the natural consequence of that will be the power. And I'm talking about more power than you've experienced by yourself. And so your insights, your talents, your abilities will be expanded because of the strength and power that comes from the truth. So I would just encourage you to align yourselves with truth and commit yourselves to serving humanity, and you'll find that is the true order of power, how you gain power for the service of humanity. That's something that I've surrendered to, and it's something that enlivens me, and I would encourage you to follow that path.
Okay, one last question before we cut you loose here. This is a question that I just received. Are you doing anything to align yourself with others in your campaign, other parties, political affiliations, anything to widen your or to get backing or to any alignments? You know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, well, you've got a lot of Republicans that agree with me and support me here in Nevada, and so I'll be working with them. Any true liberal Democrats I'm happy to work with that are actual true Democrats to the principles of civil rights and health and human rights. So Ron Paul Republicans and true liberal Democrats are these constitutional forces that I have friends among them. There's going to be a candidate out here for sheriff who's a TSA whistleblower and a federal air marshal, and we'll be aligned. He'll be a Republican. The former chairman of the GOP in Clark County will be supporting my campaign, Cindy Lake, and so we'll be meeting with her. So there's all these displaced peoples from those major parties that will become a part of this campaign, and that's fine.
So that's coalescing. Okay. I see how that would coalesce, and isn't it interesting, the political machine, strange bedfellows, if you will, from liberal Democrats to conservatives, but yet the parties don't matter when the certain objectives are the same.
The Constitution binds us all together.
That's it. So very good. Well, I have to say, David Laurie Vanderbeek, it's been just an extreme honor to have you on with us. And again, I certainly believe you've got one fantastic campaign going here. You've got a wonderful website. Certainly, your platform positions for all to know, all to read on your website. And I would urge everyone. The Hagmann Report would stand behind you. I would urge everyone to get involved. If you're in Nevada, get involved. Get behind David Laurie Vanderbeek, NevadaGovernor2014.com. Sir, thanks so much for being on the program tonight.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor. Thank you to your audience. Take care.
All right. God bless.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, what a great interview that was. David Vanderbeek. Go to his website at NevadaGovernor2014.com. You can also find he has a Facebook page, a campaign Facebook fan site, and that is on Facebook. Just look up David Laurie Vanderbeek, and you will find it, and we will put links in there.
Well, actually, yeah, you can go to, if you just go to NevadaGovernor2014.com, he's got all of the videos on here. Look, folks, a couple of things. One of the things I had talked to Joe about, we didn't want any political candidates or candidates for political office on our program necessarily. It was because you become jaded and such. But we're to the point now where this gentleman, I don't really even consider him a politician, or when you mention politician, I don't consider him a politician. I consider him someone who, if you go back in our history, and you know how, of course, I'm too young to remember this when actually governors and public servants actually acted as public servants. They went to Washington. They had full-time jobs. They did their term and left, and they didn't expect any type of. They didn't make it into a honeypot, if you will, for their retirement. And it's so refreshing to talk with this gentleman and to get his. Talk about honesty too, and talk about being unafraid to speak about issues from abortion to 9/11 to the questions about what our federal government is doing with respect to the gun grab and the attacks on the Second and the First Amendment. Very refreshing. So I would urge everybody in Nevada, all of our listeners in Nevada, to get behind David Vanderbeek. And you know what? This is how we can, if we've got a shot at taking back our country, this is how we do it. Don't you agree?
Well,
Steve says there's no political solutions to spiritual problems, but
I don't have any hope for America as a future. And
well, we still have to be
right. While we're here, while we have an opportunity, we should make change. And I will stick up for people who are trying to make positive change, doing the right thing, until we can't any longer. So to that end, yes.
Right.
Like I said, it is a breath of fresh air. And it is just sad to see that, I don't want to, this has nothing towards Mr. Vanderbeek, but, too little too late. We as a people, we as a nation have let this happen by being too distracted, too intended in our little bubble.
I understand where you're coming from. However, just imagine yourself driving a car, being in a car, and you're in the driver's seat, and you suddenly lose control. By the way, folks, true story, and you suddenly lose control of your vehicle, and you're spinning out of control, and you're going, it's on, you're hydroplaning, and you're just, you're into this spin. You are not going to sit back and say, well, I'm going to crash anyway. No, you're going to try to regain control of that automobile as long as you have the opportunity to do so. Am I wrong? Of course, I believe I'm right. Anything less than that would be dereliction of our duties, even as Christians, I believe, because we are not supposed to lay down, roll over, and give up. No. We attempt, and we do everything in our power to regain control of that automobile as we're going through the spins and turns and whatever else. As long as we're still upright and have a chance at regaining control of that automobile before we hit that bridge abutment or that tree or that whatever it is.
Yeah,
it's our duty as the driver, being in the driver's seat. Because if you're in the driver's seat, like I said, you're not going to just sit back and say, well, yeah, it's a hopeless cause, and brace for impact, because it's going to hurt, and we're probably going to die. No, you're going to work toward righting that, getting us out of that fatal spin to the best of your ability. Now, does that guarantee that, you're not going to hit that bridge abutment or that tree or that road sign, or all three? No, it doesn't guarantee it. But to do anything less, to just throw up your hands and take your hands off the steering wheel and grab a cookie, that's dereliction of duty at its utmost, and I don't think that's Christian-like or I really don't believe that's the right thing to do. So that's why I believe that Mr. Van Der Beek is so important at this point in time.
No, and I do agree with you there. I'm going to play a soundbite from something that came out from the Pope this last few days. This is from ABC. It's about 2 minutes.
Pope Francis is home at the Vatican tonight, just back from Brazil, where 3 million flocked to see him on World Youth Day. On the flight back, a relaxed pontiff made global headlines with some humble remarks, reaching out to gay Catholics in a way no pope has ever done before. ABC's Dan Harris has the story.
After being greeted like a rock star in Brazil, preaching to millions on Copacabana Beach,
in nome do Pai, do Filho, do Spirito Santo.
This new pope, who has gone to great lengths to project simplicity and openness, gave a remarkable press conference on the flight back to Rome. Such a striking difference from his often timid predecessor, who only took pre-selected questions from the press. Pope Francis laughing and joking with reporters, speaking off the cuff for 80 minutes. And here was the moment that is getting so much attention.
Se una persona è gay,
the Pope saying, quote, "If someone is gay and he searches for the Lord and has goodwill, who am I to judge?" Compare that to Pope Benedict, who called gays objectively disordered, or John Paul II, who called homosexual acts against natural law. Now, while Pope Francis's comment is making global waves tonight, it's important to note the Pope said nothing to suggest acceptance of gay sex or any other change in church policy. The Pope also made unusually warm overtures today to divorced people, who he said should receive the sacraments, and women, who he said are more important than bishops and priests. While the Pope did call for a greater role for women in the church, he also said, quote, "The door is closed to women becoming priests." As with his comments on gays, what we saw today was really a shift in style, not substance, but when you're a pope, style can be very, very consequential.
Yeah, the question is so powerful. Who am I to judge from a pope?
Exactly. You don't often hear comments like that.
You do not.
Well, that from the leader of the Catholic Church. What do you say about that?
Well, I say that the prior. First of all, I believe. Wow, what a question that is. First, I believe. Look at the bigger picture. This is the first time in history we've had actually two popes. And if you think about that, why, for example, why are we in this position? And we have what I would call a black pope, and I know that Chris Putnam and Tom Horn spoke extensively. They've written a book about this. Petrus Romanus, are we not seeing perhaps the black pope not as we expected, but in a manner that are we seeing something different here? Are we seeing the implementation of a larger agenda, of which this particular pope is attempting to apply? And I think that that's the case. And I also think too, do not discount the. I want to be very careful with my wording here. Don't discount the importance of the Vatican Bank. Okay? Now, I just want you to think about that. The Vatican Bank, the International, the IOW, or I believe it is the Religious Works, Institute of Religious Works Bank. Don't discount the importance here. Also, what he's saying, what he's doing, is he not, or could he not be covering up for something else, something deeper, something more nefarious? Once again, the Vatican Bank. That's just something plus, I found it very interesting, if not difficult, to watch grown men in, I guess they were bishops, Did anyone see this on the news where they were at Copacabana? And by the way, that holds some satanic significance as well, that location. But that said, did anyone find it disturbing to watch a group of black-robed men do the wave? I don't know. I guess it was like the wave, getting down, getting funky. It just didn't sit well with me. And of course, I spent 4 years at a Catholic seminary, graduated from Catholic seminary. I, of course, did not become a priest. That said,
yeah,
I've got a lot of problems with this, and don't.
I want to hit on an article here written by Michael Snyder on the 26th of July. The name of Jesus has become a dirty word in a politically correct America. In the United States today, there are few words that provoke as much outrage as the name of Jesus. It is being banned from graduation ceremonies. Chaplains all over America are being forbidden from using his name in their prayers, and many school officials all over the nation have become absolutely fanatical about eliminating every trace of Christian expression from their schools. One elementary school in North Carolina even ordered a 6-year-old girl to remove the word God from a poem that she had written to honor her grandfathers. Political correctness is spreading like cancer in this country, and our freedom of religion is rapidly being transformed into a guarantee of freedom from religion for those that hate the Christian faith. Without a doubt, there is a war on the Christian faith in America today. It is being waged in the classrooms, courtrooms, and churches all over the nation. The following is an excerpt from a speech that Ron Paul gave earlier this year. There is a war on Christianity, not just from the liberal elites here at home, but worldwide, and your government, or more correctly, you, the taxpayer, are funding it. Evidence of this war on Christianity is everywhere these days. The following are just a few examples. An elementary school in North Carolina that ordered the 6-year-old girl to remove the word God from a poem she made honoring her grandfathers that served in the Vietnam War. An Ohio steakhouse banned a Christian pastor from using the name of Jesus when they open up the daily session with prayer. The use of the name Jesus has been forbidden in all prayers concerning sessions of North Carolina State. Last year, a federal appeals court that prayed before commission meetings in North Carolina included the name of Jesus was unconstitutional. The Federal Court of Appeals ruled on that. Earlier this year, a Florida Atlantic University student refused to stomp on the name of Jesus was banned from his class. A student at the Sonoma State University was ordered to take off a cross that she was wearing because someone could be offended. A teacher in New Jersey was fined for giving his Bible to a student that did not own one. One open-air preacher in Illinois was recently threatened with arrest for scaring people with his message of the gospel. The list goes on and on and on.
Okay, and you know what? You bring up a good point here, because I believe this. If you would take a poll and ask any American out there what Christians believe, because you just made a good point. We talk about too how you mentioned the word, you mentioned the name of Jesus. My goodness, the scorn that's thrown on top of you. But look, if you take a poll and you ask what Christians believe, you're going to receive a whole ton of answers, some of which will be correct, but most will be very misleading. Almost everybody's going to say that Christianity is a conservative political viewpoint, or at least stems from that. And there's this imposition of its morals on others, and that's what Barack Hussein Obama is teaching the American public. And we know that the fundamentalists, the evangelists, have always been critical of the liberals, especially the theological liberals, who stopped preaching the gospel in favor of political and social deeds, actions, and a place at the political table. They've sold out. They have sold out.
And not only that, what is going to come is going to be exactly what you said that they say Christians do, which is, forcing their viewpoints down others' throats and But what's going to happen is when this new world, old Babylonian government is reestablished, they're going to have their one world utopia, and they are going to preach tolerance and love and peace, but they're going to wipe out every Christian that is alive or try to.
Well, I would lay a lot of this fault right at the feet of many churches, including but not limited to the Catholic Church. We as a nation, I believe, are under judgment because our churches have become spiritually anemic. They have allowed tolerance of homosexuality into their churches, tolerance of abortions into their churches. We have, in fact, you could find these various mega churches. How many have they saved with budgets of millions upon millions of dollars? You know, what they've done is the gospel, and these are my words, gospel of substitution. They've substituted sermons and seminars, seminars, I suppose would be a good word. They've, instead of preaching the gospel, it's a get along type situation. They'll offer therapeutic advice on how we can all live better if we just love one another. Okay, well, look, we have become ashamed of the gospel as a church. You know, it's interesting because there was a story recently of a Muslim family in Texas who converted to Christianity, but that conversion came at a great personal cost. They attended a large church with the hope that they would hear a word that would give them encouragement and hope. Instead, the pastor preached a sermon on the benefits of good nutrition. Okay, now, why did I bring that up as an example? Well, there's this great move by these larger churches. I'm not going to say evangelical, but by these larger churches to stray to topics that won't be offensive to people, that won't intimidate others. You know, no one is willing to take a stand anymore, which is why it was refreshing to hear David Laurie Vanderbeek take a stand, a political stand, and say, no, we're not going to have any of this crap in our state. Agenda 21, this gun regulation, we're not going to put up with it. But yet the churches are putting up with this sappy tolerance of inclusion, which I believe is going to hasten the judgment of this country.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached